It's Jo. I thought I'd come and speak to you today about my pre-op appointment. It's just popped up as a 2-year time hop reminder on my Facebook that it was 2 years ago today that I had my multidisciplinary pre-op appointment at Aintree. So that's the one where you see quite a few people and they tell you could be there for up to like 4 hours. So yeah, it's a long day with lots of information to take in, and yeah, I can't believe it's 2 years ago now. On one hand it seems like yesterday, and on the other it feels like a lifetime ago. So yeah, so part of that, you have a little bit of a talk. I think it was a dietitian that held the talk for us that day, and it was a little slideshow, sort of basically discussing some of the options regarding which surgeries were available to choose from, some of the sort of pros and cons for each one, that kind of thing. So there's lots of information given to us then. We then were asked for our height and weight, so we were measured and weighed by the nurses there. So that gave them my starting BMI. And the other things that the nurses did on that occasion was that they also took swabs to check for MRSA, so they're the lovely nostril and groin swabs, just to check for MRSA so that they can deal with that before your operation date if that's needed. If it shows up as positive, they can. Obviously, pre-armed is best. And then I think the other thing was that I had a cardiograph, an ECG test to check, obviously, your heart, to make sure that that's all healthy for general anaesthetic. And they did a full blood test also, so to check all your vitamin levels, make sure that there's nothing that flags up with them that need to be addressed before your operation date. And I think that was it on the medical front with the nurses. I then saw this surgeon, and was able to discuss with him surgery options. And at the time, because predominantly my issue around food has always been more volume rather than sort of predominantly sweets and that kind of thing. So I initially I thought that the sleeve would be a good option for me, because that would limit my intake of volume of food, but wouldn't necessarily give me the dumping syndrome that I was a little bit worried about at the time. So after speaking to the surgeon, he kind of said, based on the percentage, the average percentage of excess weight loss that's expected of each surgery, he recommended that the bypass would be a good option for me, because I think it was a 60% average with a sleeve and a 70% average with a gastric bypass. So as the 60% wouldn't get me as close to a healthy BMI, which was my own target, he recommended that it was a good standard would be to go for the gastric bypass. So obviously I took that all in, but he said that obviously I didn't need to make a final decision with him on that meeting, to obviously take away the information that I'd been given from that appointment, and to have a good think about it. I filled out some paperwork to say, that predominantly sleeve was my initial choice, but I was able to change my mind if necessary, or if I desired. I then went on to see the dietitian. So this was a different dietitian than the lady that I'd been seeing through the NHS Tier 3 process. Because at the time, Aintree, the Tier 3 was being run by the NHS team. So I was seeing NHS dietitians, physiotherapists and consultants. And then when I was awarded the funding for my operation, they then passed you on to a private company who operated at Aintree, but was a company called Phoenix Health. And they had their own consultant bariatric surgeons and their own anaesthetist and their own dietitians, bariatric dietitians. So it was their dietitian that I saw on this occasion, and discussed with them some of the forms that I had to fill out, because there was some paperwork about my eating habits and things like that they'd gone through, and just wanted to discuss, just make sure that I didn't have any other issues around food, or binge eating or any other eating disorders, that all of that wouldn't affect my success that was available through weight loss surgery. So she agreed that, from the information that I'd given her, that, that it was more of a quantity of food that I struggled with, rather than binging on sweets and chocolate and that kind of thing. So she had said that for her, either operation would be a good option for me, either the sleeve or the gastric bypass, and that predominantly it would be down to my choice. But yeah, she signed me off and said that, she was happy for me to go ahead and to be put forward for the waiting list for the surgery. So that was a great weight off my chest. The one that I think I was the most nervous about meeting, because I didn't have any experience of, was the psychologist that I had to see. During my process, during the Tier 3 with Aintree, I didn't have to see a psychologist because the dietitian and the consultant didn't see that I had a need for that service. So this was basically just the last, not hurdle as such, but it was just the last tick box to just make sure that, if I thought there might have been any issues that needed to be dealt with before I had my surgery, and that I was fully aware of the risks that I was taking. I was fully aware of, sort of the impact it can have on your mental state, and that making sure that you're prepared for it. So yeah, I did end up talking a little bit about my relationship with food, and how, how I thought I would be able to cope with certain situations should they arrive after my operation. And she believed that, I was in a good mental position to be able to prepare myself for the changes, and that I'd put in place strategies to be able to cope with emotional things should they come up, because obviously sort of for a lot of people food is a bit of an emotional crutch when you are facing sadness or stress or sort of varying different emotions. We tend to go to food to comfort or to numb that pain, or to dull the feelings, basically. So she just wanted to make sure that I was aware that I wouldn't have that after my operation, that I would need to prepare other alternatives. So she was all happy with what I had put in place for those situations, and another tick in the tick box to make sure that everything was all hunky-dory for my operation. The other person that I saw that day was the anaesthetist, and it was actually the anaesthetist that really put my mind at ease, because obviously we all are a bit concerned with the thought of going through a major operation, being plus size, being overweight, and the heightened risk that you pose going under anaesthetic. So it was great to speak to him, and he really put my mind at ease. Obviously I'd lost quite a bit of weight before my operation, so in terms of qualifying on the NHS, I was kind of one of the smaller patients that was there, so I was a lesser risk. There's still always a risk with anaesthetic and with an operation, and there's always risks involved. But so I'd reduced my risk, and I was I was a lot fitter because of the exercise that I'd been doing and that kind of thing. So it really helped put my mind at ease for the upcoming operation. And it was him that was able to give me a rough idea of I think it was a rough date for my operation that would be then later confirmed by letter. So that was mind-blowing. It was like, sort of I'd ticked all these boxes, that it was like all these hurdles that I've been having to jump over for the last year of the process of tier 3, and these were the last final steps towards my final, well, not my final goal, but my goal of achieving the weight loss surgery. So it was a long day. Sort of hospitals, as you know, are not the most pleasant of places to visit. They're usually hot and humid, and sort of you're taking in a lot of information that day, and speaking to lots of people, and sort of, so I came away with my head in the clouds, buzzing, but full of a headache and dehydrated and just a complete whirlwind. But it was great to have a date to sort of work towards, and it was then the next step was I had it was like a meeting with a couple of ladies that were due the surgery the same week as me. We had to attend like a seminar about our pre-op diet, and that was the last step before surgery day. So it was a blast from the past when that came up on my time hop today, and bringing back all those memories of how that felt on that day, and having my husband there supporting me was lovely. And it's one thing that, I think will always stay with you, sort of when you've worked so hard towards something to finally sort of be given the go ahead, sort of you feel over the moon. And, I hope that's something that you all get to feel, if you're on this journey and you're jumping through all the NHS hoops. Believe me, I know it can feel like a lifetime, but when you're on the other side and you've had your operation, you're looking back at these appointments and these milestones along the way, it, like I say, it feels like, a million years ago, in some respects. So yeah, it just whizzes by. It really does. So keep hanging on in there. Keep up the good work. Keep on going to the appointments, and sort of you'll get there. So it's been lovely to talk to you again today, and I shall speak to you all again soon, no doubt. Take care, and I hope you're all well. See you soon. Bye.